James, welcome to the show. Russia's building up on the Ukrainian border. What kind of buildup are we seeing?
So in the past couple of months, we've seen there's claims of up to 100,000 Russian troops on the border between the Ukraine and Russia. Mixed in there is there are airborne troops the Russians have, an increasing number of intelligence assets, a buildup of logistical capabilities, and heavy artillery. There are indications that this force structure could be used in an offensive type of operation into the Ukraine, and that's kind of a major risk that President Biden and some of the Western world leaders are considering right now. Where that goes from there is anybody's guess. Um, Ben Hodges, General Hodges, said that he doubts that the Russians have the logistical capability to launch an offensive anytime in the immediate future, but other sources are talking about the end of January being kind of when the Russians have that infrastructure in place to move forward into a place like Crimea. So any kind of imminent attack is probably not going to happen, but long term, it presents a big problem for NATO and Europe.
When you talk to Lieutenant General Ben Hodges, who was the commander of the U.S. Army Europe, he said that the messaging is very different. Russia is very forceful, and the West not so much. President Biden talked to President Putin one day for I think 2 hours, and the next day said out loud that troops are off the table. That's something that caught General Hodges' ear.
The announcement that troops were absolutely not a possibility or course of action being considered by the administration. I'm sure that troops were never going to be considered, but why would we say that? And so that also, again, is seen by the Kremlin as taking something off the table without them having done anything positive.
So already some would say that the West has given Russia something without getting something in return. Is that something that President Putin is looking at?
I believe it is. The reality on the ground is that NATO it does not have Ukraine as a member state. Article 5 does not apply to NATO at this point, or to Ukraine at this point in time. And by all accounts, there are only a couple hundred American troops located in the country, where they are under specific orders not to accompany the Ukrainians at their training. They're on a very specific advise and assist mission. They cannot accompany those Ukrainians into combat should that happen.
Russian people, do they have an appetite for war?
It's hard to tell. According to General Hodges, a war which produced the body count would be something that would be pretty hard to palate for the Russian people themselves, particularly if it was an offensive war, shall we say, a war of aggression, a war of choice.
James, if Russia did attack, what would be their military objective?
Well, according to General Hodges and other experts that I spoke to on the matter, it looks like it would be twofold. Primarily, it would be to degrade and destroy any offensive military capability that they felt the Ukrainians had built up. So, in effect, they would attempt to instantaneously destroy the Ukrainian military in place. There's a very static front line that's been there since 2014. They know where the Ukrainians are located. They know where their fire systems are located. They would target those first and eliminate their military capability. The second part, or the second objective, would be geographic, and it'd be very limited. They would stick to the Donbass area. They would stick to the areas which are already, locked in conflict. And according to General Hodges, we'd be very unlikely to see the Russians roll all the way to, say, Kiev. And there's almost no chance of them attempting to occupy all of the Ukraine and sort of incorporate it Soviet style back into Russia.
If the Russians do expand the kinetic operations, that we would most likely see something coming out of Crimea, where they've got a very significant bastion for launching air power, but also for logistics. And the operational objective would be to isolate Ukraine from the Black Sea.
The political objective at the end of the day would be to show the West that Ukraine is a failed state and is not worthy of admission into NATO or further Western involvement.
What kind of support does Russia have within Ukraine's borders?
In some of the provinces, particularly Donbass, there is an incredibly high number of ethnic Russians. And one of the more provocative pieces of rhetoric coming out of the Kremlin is, them talking about Russian genocide. It has a certain tinge to it that we've seen historically. And when you start speaking, in terms of ethnic war, it creates a very volatile scenario and a very broad set of justifications.
Well, we'll see what happens. James, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. My pleasure.